Welcome to the latest World Cup date here at Soccer Down. Here, Jason Longshore, Jessica Sharman, recapping your action from France today. No surprises in the results. I think some might be surprised by the margins, but not the actual result. Sweden 5-1 over Thailand in the morning match. United States 3-0 over Chile in the second match. What were you surprised or not surprised by today, Jess?
I mean, I agree exactly with what you're saying. It wasn't a surprise that Sweden and the USA came out tops, but it was a surprise about how well Chile and Thailand came out and defended. They worked hard. They didn't let their previous games mentally destroy them. And instead, they came out and they battled harder than ever. And the highlight for me was Thailand getting a goal. Fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And the second half for Thailand, I mean, you give up a goal in the 6th minute and then again in the 19th. You had to have that feeling of, oh, no, here we go again.
It was deja vu, wasn't it? You expected the players to drop their heads, but they showed so much more maturity in this game. And they probably, after the 13-0, they probably had some sort of debrief where their coach told them, you know, you are battling against some world heavyweights in this competition, and you want to be proud of the fact you've made it here. You've got nothing to lose. And it seemed like they responded in a completely different way in this game to going down against the USA.
They responded internally. They gave up one more goal in the first half. It was 3-0 at halftime. And then the second half, they kept Sweden off the board until the 81st. And then they get that goal you talked about that brought tears to the coach and the bench's eyes. Kanjana Songengoen gets the goal in the 91st minute. And it's a penalty at the very end, or Thailand and Sweden would have ended up with a second half at 1-1. That is a massive success for Thailand. One thing that you mentioned was the change at goalkeeper and the effect that had.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's underestimated what a difference it makes having your steady, permanent goalkeeper in position. It inspires confidence in the defenders. It inspires confidence in the team in general to go more forward. And the goalkeeper day was just a better all-round goalkeeper. That's no disrespect to the young lady that played her heart out against the USA, but I think if this first-choice goalkeeper had been in the net against America, they would have had a tougher time of scoring. And this is one of the reasons we mentioned it when it was coming up to the England game. Goalkeeper rotation by choice is an odd one to me. You have to get used to your back line. You have to get used to the way you play. And I think Thailand showed today why it's so important to have your number one between the posts.
100%. Boonsing saw a lot of shots today, 35 in total, 12 on target. She made 7 saves. Yeah, 35 shots. But then you look at the other side for Thailand. They had 5 shots. They had 3 on target. They looked pretty good out on the break. More. Yeah.
And I think it's because they had that confidence. The goalkeeper was quicker with her distribution. They felt like they could push bodies forward a little bit more. I think against the USA, they had 11 players in their own half for probably 99% of the game. They barely counted. I think I remember there being 1 shot from Thailand against USA. This game, they looked more free-flowing. They looked more confident to break forward, and that showed in the goal. The goal was a fantastic ball through a great run by the forward and a dangerous finish. I think the Swede goalkeeper will be a little bit disappointed. She got beat at near post, which is always something goalkeepers try and avoid. But then again, she hadn't been tested much through the game, which is why concentration is so paramount. And Sweden lacked concentration towards the end, I felt like. And you know, Sweden are a solid team, but for me, they're not a real contender. They just have too many sort of weak points, and they're not clinical enough in front of goal.
I think that's what's going to hurt them ultimately. I think they're a good defensive team. I think they will give the U.S. more issues than the United States has seen in this tournament so far, by far. But I don't think their attack really threatens anybody. They feel like a team that's going to have to grind out results, defending, and once you get to the knockouts, honestly playing for extra time and penalties. I just don't see them winning games in regulation against top teams.
No, but it will be interesting to see them face the USA. It's the first real challenge that both teams have had, and I'll be excited for that game. It's going to be a little bit more unpredictable, and it's the first real challenge that USA will face, and it'll be interesting to see how they handle that improved opposition.
What did you think of the United States today? 3 goals in the first half, nothing in the second half, 2 of the goals from set pieces, and a lot of changes to the lineup.
I was reading the lineup. I was a little bit shocked. I understand, making a few changes. You're focusing on Sweden, that tougher game, but I believe it was 7 changes, and for me, that's just too many. It's all about rhythm in tournament soccer. These women are full professionals. They can play these sort of numbers of games, particularly those that went through college. They're used to the sort of Tuesday, Saturday rotation, multiple games in a week. And I just thought that it did impact their rhythm. They had 3-0 probably flattered Chile a little bit. The U.S. had so many chances. Just Endler was another level of goalkeeper in that performance.
Yeah, 6 saves for Endler on the night. 26 shots for the U.S., 9 on target. For Chile, 1 shot, none on target. They had 28% of the ball. The only 1 goal from the run of play, and it's from a half clearance. The other 2 goals are off of set pieces, and the first one probably shouldn't have been a corner kick to begin with.
No, that bothered me looking at that, and that's one of those things where VAR seems to be involved in every other single thing,
And that's when they
just
can't
seems
be.
like, and that's what's disappointing. Things like that change the game that are obvious facts. Again, it's almost like if you could have goal line technology on the lines, it was just an odd one for me. It impacted the game, and that second goal was the most important one for me. I think that's what swings the momentum even more in the USA's favor. Of course, they were dominant in possession, but Chile had been defending their hearts out, putting their bodies on the line, and that second goal was sort of the nail in the coffin because their players have some heart, thinking they might nip one, they might get a penalty, things might, break away. And that second goal was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back for them. And if it wasn't for Endler, it could have been far more.
Right, and the second goal, it was 26th minute. So from then on, it's Carli Lloyd on another set piece. And this is, when you talk about the lineup, I think my biggest thing with it was it felt like too many changes. I think it affected the rhythm for sure. But I do appreciate that Jill Ellis got the center backs back together with Goalkeeper and Sauerbrunn back in the lineup and with Julie Ertz in front of them. So you had that spine well connected. And at least they got a game together because that was one of the biggest things I've been worried about coming into this tournament. Now, is that enough? We'll have to wait and see. Something that jumped out to me was on set pieces, for example. Who's going to take them when it matters? Because in this match, your corner kicks, Tierna Davidson, 2 good deliveries on the goal from Ertz and the second goal from Lloyd, but she's not a likely starter. Like, who is that set piece person? I don't know.
And then another thing I found interesting was, again, the Chilean was a mile offside, but the U.S. looked shaky on that free kick play. The keeper came out. She was in no man's land. I think against a stronger opposition that delivers balls across over the back through the middle, the U.S. is going to struggle defensively. We called it out time and time again before the tournament. We were concerned about the U.S. at the back. We were concerned about the goalkeeping position. I think they're vulnerable against attacks. And as I've mentioned, I think the fact that they played 2 weaker oppositions is going to become problematic when they face Sweden, when they face potentially Spain, when they face France. These stronger oppositions that are going to challenge the defense, they're not used to having that. I don't think they've had a shot on target. As a goalkeeper, had to make a save for the U.S. this tournament?
I don't think so.
And that's just not good preparation as a goalkeeper. It's really difficult to up your game when you've been used to having, twiddling your thumbs between the sticks for the whole 90 minutes.
No, actually, according to the stats against Thailand, there were 2 saves. I do not remember them.
So. They weren't. They were probably, basic training ground catches, like simple saves. They haven't had to deal with being bombarded with crosses, which is another thing I am concerned about, the goalkeeper's judgment at times.
And Sweden will do that to you.
Ball. Exactly. Sweden like their wing play. They like putting in damaging crosses. That's what affected Thailand. And I don't know. I think the U.S., they'll win against Sweden, I think, but I don't think it'll be another shutout for the U.S. I don't think they've shown me enough defensively to deserve a shutout prediction.
No, it's feeling like a 2-1 or a 3-1 for me right now. to look a little bit more at Sweden and get a little bit better read on them before we go completely official with predictions. But yeah, their crossing game is the biggest concern. And Alyssa Nair coming out on that set piece, the line stepped up well, and it was a good idea from Chile. I mean, it was a training ground play where you've got multiple little head fakes and hesitations. Mm-hmm. It didn't miss by that much, and Nair was not convincing in the way she came off her line. That's definitely an issue when you look ahead. The penalty that Carli Lloyd missed in the second half would have been a hat trick for Carli Lloyd. Karma. I agree. The ball don't lie, and I don't think it was a penalty.
No, I was disappointed with it. We spoke previously off air that potentially if you call it on the field, it's harder to overrule. But for that referee to go over, look at it, and it was a long time she looked at it. She looked at it from several angles, and to still call that contact was made in the box is disappointing to me. I believe the contact started a good yard outside of the box, and by the time it was fouled, I think it was a hard call on Chile. You can't have sympathy calls. Deep down, for me, probably as a neutral, I wanted to not be a call more because I, was feeling the story for them. But it's, to me, another issue of VAR. It's still controversial. It's still, these referees are taking 3 minutes, pausing the game, and still getting the decision potentially wrong. I'm just not sure how I feel about that one.
Yeah, VAR on yes-no decisions, I'm good. VAR on judgment calls and using VAR especially to, rejudge a situation on the field, that's where I get frustrated with it. If the ref calls that in the run of the play, I don't like it. Yeah, the card felt completely out of place. If the ref calls that in the field, I don't like it, but you can accept it a lot easier when you see the videos and then you come back and give it and give the card. It really feels just out of place.
Harsh. And it's the context thing as well. They're watching it in slow-mo. Yeah. They're watching it from all these angles. It's not, we forget that soccer is a game that takes place at speed. You can't make calls necessarily judged on something that's broken down in slow-mo. So I was disappointed with that one. But as I said, I think the reason Lloyd missed is that Endler won the mental game.
She did. She came out and talked to Carli Lloyd too for a minute there before she took it.
I'd like to know what she said because I'm sure she speaks enough English to say a few words to her.
Yes.
But when you've watched a goalkeeper make save after save, it was the same as Schneider when she made the save in the penalty in both games. I always favored her making the save because she's getting into these players' heads and knowing that in order to score this penalty, they're going to have to place it really well. And that's often why these penalty takers either miss or they don't give as well of a shot as they want because the goalkeeper's got in their head and they realize that with Lloyd, she knew she had to hit that bottom corner and she just dragged her shot because she was so trying to hit, the side netting.
Yeah, it felt like she had to be perfect with it and she just pushes it wide. So 3-0 U.S. win. It's not dominant, but it's really good. It's about what you would expect. They defeated Chile 3-0 and 4-0 late last year. Chile's a team that is a couple players away. They're a team that maybe in 4 years we'll see more from them as more investment comes into the game there. Feels a lot like Argentina in that they're tactically strong, but just not quite there yet.
No, and without Enzo, let's be honest, it would have been, a far worse result. That Chilean team needs to build their team around their goalkeeper, honestly, and just add a few more quality players because Endler deserves a better back line and a better forward attacking play around her because she's quality.
Yeah, 100%. We get two groups that finish up tomorrow as we start match day 3, and we will start with the games at noon. It's Group B. Germany has already punched their ticket to the knockout rounds on 6 points. They play South Africa. I think really the only question is how many players Germany rests and what they look like from a lineup standpoint. I think a complete second team gets a win here and they go through with 9 points. There's not any question about them being the number one team in Group B in my mind.
No, I agree completely. Germany, with even their second 11, is a stronger team than South Africa. That's not to disrespect South Africa, but they're still a growing team. I hope they nick a goal. They deserve a celebration, just how Thailand got their goal. It's always nice for these new teams to the World Cup to have something to cherish. other than just showing up.
Absolutely. And the game that is really intriguing in my mind, Spain and China, both on 3 points. Spain has the slight goal differential advantage coming in. So if they draw, Spain goes through as the number 2 team. And that's really important for United States fans because number 2 team in this group is who the number 1 team in the United States group will match up against in the round of 16. You have the Spanish team who wants a lot of possession. They want a lot of the ball. And you have the Chinese team that we have seen is not afraid to get stuck into a tackle here and there. This
it's going to be a very
really
physical.
Interesting.
I think it's going to be a lot of yellow cards, a lot of dirty tackles potentially. China have a game plan that they're playing very differently to the China team of past years. They're a lot more physical. They're a lot more... I don't the word dirty is a tough one. I think they tactically get stuck in, maybe hack at a few ankles. And I don't think the Spanish team, they're similar to their men's team. They play very pretty soccer. They like to play 1-2 passes. I can see China leaving their footing on a few occasions and the Spaniards not taking it very well. And I think that's why this game's going to be a battle of heads and mental. If Spain get too rattled and too disturbed and too worried and don't play their game, and China managed to win that head game, I think China could go through. But the Spanish have more quality, in my opinion.
I'm right there with you. I think Spain's the better team. They should go through. They should win comfortably here. But if they get frustrated, if the referee doesn't take control of the match early, because I feel like China's going to come in with the same strategy as they did to Germany. They're going to go in for the tackle. They're going to go in hard, and they're going to make the referee make decisions. And if the ref isn't strong,
stomp, exactly. We've seen it. We've seen the refs. There's been some very good refereeing. I'll say that. Obviously, we've talked too much about refereeing errors without praising that. There's been some great advantage plays today. Actually, again, I know we're off topic a little bit, but I remember the USA having a great flow of play, which Endless saved with her feet, but it only happened because the referee gave a great advantage call. There's been some really good refereeing, but it's so important on games like this that could have the potential to get pretty nasty. And, the more you let go, the more China are potentially going to push those fouls. And that's when you have to protect the players, because at the end of the day, the main goal of a referee is not only to keep the game fair, but to keep the players protected and safe. So I hope whoever's in top of that game isn't afraid to use her cards and set a precedent early.
Yeah, I have a feeling tomorrow we're going to be talking about the referee's involvement in the Spain-China game, whether they called it very tight and that opened the game up a bit for the Spanish, or they let a lot of physical play go and Spain gets frustrated with it and struggles to play.
As long as we're not talking about VAR, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, maybe a different level of refereeing since this has turned into a referee podcast these days.
Absolutely.
Group A finishes up at 3 o'clock, and South Korea and Norway. South Korea, no goals so far in the tournament. They've given up 6. They play Norway. You would expect Norway to get the win there and move to 6 points. France plays Nigeria, and France didn't look great against Norway. And we've talked about that decision to give them a penalty late, and it felt off. France is going to play a Nigerian team that is still very much alive in this tournament. Even if they don't get a win here and Norway does, Nigeria could go through as one of the best third-place teams. I don't think this is going to be easy for the hosts.
No, I think it's going to be a tough one. Nigeria is going to come in and they almost have more to play for because France is pretty comfortable. And I think Nigeria comes in, they offer that speed and strength up top. They offer a real tough challenge for the French defense that hasn't been all that convincing. What I think will get France over the line is their set plays. They're very good in the air. We've seen Renard, score some great headers, and I think that's going to be very dangerous because they're not the most convincing at the back from set plays, and I think France will punish on that.
I think they should. If Nigeria gets an early goal, this could be a pretty wild night for the hosts. I think France gets through probably 2-0. I think they handle it. Nigeria's got to keep their heads, though, because even if they fall down 2-0, they could still get through with that as a third place
it's all
team.
about playing defensively. And That's what makes it so interesting with the 4th, 3rd place teams going through.
Mm-hmm.
It's the importance of goal difference here, and that's why we see a lot of complaints about the odd goals towards the end of the game that may be on dodgy calls, because it could be that one dodgy call that puts you out, because every goal counts in this tournament.
That's why China-Spain, like, to go back to that as we wrap up, is so interesting, because if they both draw, I think they're going to end up being pretty happy. If you get to 60, 70 minutes in and it's a draw, it's scoreless, or it's 1-1, I don't think either team has a whole lot of initiative from there.
Maybe they'll make an under-the-table deal. We've seen that happen before.
It happens, because China, if they're on 4 points, they're definitely going through as a 3rd-place team. I mean, there's no question about it. So, and they would avoid the U.S. in a knockout round game in the round of 16. So, you know, these things do come up, and maybe they're not the best for the game at times, but I think Spain and China both go through, and Nigeria's just got to keep it tight against France. If they lose by 2 or less, I think they've got a shout. They've got a shout.
And that's where they have to be smart, because we've seen them be a little bit erratic going forward and leaving themselves so overexposed. Yes, it would be nice to get a win, but for them, they've got their best bet at holding it at 0-0 and just sort of grabbing a point.
Go for it for 15, 20 minutes, play open, try to catch France sleepwalking, and if it doesn't happen then shut it down and play defensively and keep the score down and manage the match. So we'll have 4 to talk about tomorrow, 2 at noon, 2 at 3. Remember, it's the final day of the group stage, so games will take place at the same time. Interesting storylines here. I think other groups coming up the rest of the week, there'll be even more interesting ones, and we'll be back all week to keep you up to date with everything from France. Make sure you're tweeting at us with your questions during the tournament. I'm at Longshoe. Jess is at Jessica ATLUTD, and tweet at the Kelly Francis as well. And we'll be back tomorrow with another World Cup date. Thanks for listening.